Brought to you by Thomas Allgaier and Fredis. This edition highlights key LinkedIn posts on future mobility and market evolution in weeks 13 and 14. Fredis supports Tier 1 automotive suppliers with early-stage market validation for their R&D efforts by combining secondary research, direct OEM expert interviews, and facilitated customer meetings. You can find more info in the description. So, welcome to this deep dive, especially if you're a mobility professional navigating all these changes right now. We are so glad to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Our mission for today's session is really to cut through a lot of the noise out there because, if you look at the industry right now, we are moving out of this era of hyper growth and experimentation.
Right, the Wild West phase.
Exactly, the Wild West.
Right.
And we're stepping into this much more operational discipline, system level kind of era.
Yeah, and we've been combing through the top future mobility trends on LinkedIn over the past 2 weeks to really pin this down.
Yeah.
And we've clustered everything into 3 main shifts for you today.
Right. So we'll be looking at the sudden maturation of micromobility, the total unbundling of autonomous driving, and finally, those systemic infrastructure bottlenecks.
The bottlenecks that are really forcing everyone to rethink things. Let's just jump right into that first theme, micromobility, because I feel like the narrative here has completely flipped, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, for years, it was just a land grab.
Yeah, just burning cash.
Yeah.
Companies dropping thousands of e-scooters onto city sidewalks overnight and just, figuring it out later.
Figuring it out when the city complains, basically. But Catherine Kiefer at the McKinsey Center for Future Mobility just posted some really interesting data on this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she highlighted that 6 of the top 10 shared e-scooter operators in Europe actually reached profitability for 2024 and 2025.
Wait, really? 6 out of 10 are profitable now. I mean, I got to admit, I'm slightly skeptical of that. How do you go from losing millions on, vandalism and hardware decay to suddenly turning a profit?
I know, it sounds like clever accounting, right? But it's actually a fundamental shift in their unit economics. They stopped treating the hardware like it's disposable.
Right.
The vehicles are way more durable now, and more importantly, operators are getting ruthless about where they launch. They aren't just fighting for market share everywhere anymore.
Which, that perfectly explains Frederick Helm's recent post about Voi.
Oh, yeah, the Netherlands launch.
Yeah. So Voi finally launched in the Netherlands, specifically in Groningen. But they only deployed this highly targeted fleet of 400 bikes. And the crazy part that Helm pointed out is that it took them 7 years to crack this market.
7 years of trying.
Yeah. And you think, well, the Netherlands, right. Bikes are practically a religion there. It should be easy.
But that's exactly why it's so hard. When a country is that obsessed with bikes, Helm noted that in Groningen, up to 65% of all trips are already taken by bicycle.
That's massive.
Right. So residents already own 2 or 3 private bikes. So Voi couldn't just use their standard copy-paste playbook.
They had to get surgical.
Exactly. They spent years working with local authorities to find the exact friction points, first and last mile gaps at the main train station, where a shared bike actually makes more sense than a private one.
That makes total sense. It's like surgical deployment instead of carpet bombing the city.
And speaking of cities, regulators are getting way more surgical now, too. We've got this whole carrots versus sticks approach happening.
Oh, yeah. User behavior is the big bottleneck now.
Right. So George D. just broke down this landmark New Deal in London, in the Lambeth borough. And it is definitely a massive stick.
Yeah. Lambeth is essentially treating these operators like a strict public utility now.
Completely. I mean, it's bay-only parking. If a rider leaves a bike even slightly outside the painted box, the council seizes it and immediately slaps the operator with a fine.
Wow.
But the part I thought was really wild is that Lambeth is legally forcing these operators to align their pricing with standard bus fares.
See, that is fascinating.
Right. Why would a city council care what a private tech company charges for a scooter ride? It's all about cannibalization. Because if a shared e-bike is way cheaper than taking the bus, commuters just abandon the public transit system.
Oh, and then the city loses transit revenue.
Exactly. The city loses money, the streets get clogged. So by forcing price parity, Lambeth ensures that micromobility is acting as an extension of the bus network rather than a parasite feeding off of it.
Okay, so that's the stick in London. But Ronald Zabels posted about a totally different approach that Bolt is doing in Latvia, which is much more of a carrot.
Right, the riding score system.
Yeah, they track your parking accuracy, your braking patterns, all that. And if your score goes up, You actually unlock financial perks, like free reservations.
Which is brilliant because they have to do something. Operators realize they can't just keep eating those massive city fines. It destroys their margins.
Yeah, and you can't physically babysit every single rider.
Right, so you have to gamify the compliance.
But, looking at all this, the price matching, the gamification, I have to ask, is this just the early ride-hailing playbook happening all over again?
How do you mean?
Like 10 years ago, Uber and Lyft burned billions to subsidize rides, right? Just to permanently change our habits. And now that we all expect a scooter on every corner, the adults have entered the room and they're finally focusing on unit economics. Is this time actually different?
I think it is different, yeah. And the key difference is the physical footprint plus the environmental data.
Right.
Uber subsidized putting 2-ton cars on the road.
Right.
Micromobility is a totally different geometry. Haitham Imam shared some incredibly sharp data on this. E-bikes emit 70% less CO2 per kilometer than electric cars.
70% less than an EV.
Yeah, but the real kicker is the embedded carbon. The carbon it takes just to build an e-bike is 40 times less than an EV.
Oh my God, 40 times.
40 times. So you have to drive an EV for years just to break even on the carbon debt from mining the battery metals. An e-bike pays off its debt almost immediately.
That is wild. I mean, if you're listening right now and you manage a fleet or you're doing city planning, you just cannot ignore that efficiency. Using a 2,000-kilogram vehicle to move one person 3 kilometers across town is, well, it's basically irrational at this point.
It totally is. And really, right-sizing the hardware is a perfect transition into our second theme today, which is the autonomous mobility shift.
Yes, because autonomy is having its own reality check.
Exactly. The whole narrative is moving away from tech hype and focusing on commercial execution. The days of tech companies trying to build everything themselves are over. We are seeing a total unbundling of the robotaxi value chain.
Which we saw perfectly illustrated by the news out of Zagreb, Croatia. Alexander Shab, along with Annabel Diaz-Calderon and Marcin Masirog, all highlighted the launch of Europe's first commercial robotaxi service there.
Right. And the structure of that Zagreb deal is basically the blueprint for the future.
Because, let's unpack how we got here. A few years ago, the Silicon Valley dream was to own the full stack, right?
Yeah.
You build the car, you write the self-driving AI, you own the physical fleet, and you run the consumer app.
Yeah, which was an ego-driven, capital-intensive nightmare.
Exactly.
Augustin Friedel pointed out that companies have finally accepted they just can't control every layer. The Zagreb model separates it beautifully. You have Pony.ai providing the tech.
Just the software.
Just the software. Then a completely different company, Verne, owns the cars and handles the local regulatory headaches. And then Uber just acts as the aggregator, capturing the rider demand.
It's like a restaurant. You have the farmer growing the food, the chef cooking it, and the delivery app getting it to your door.
Right. Nobody tries to do all three anymore. And Friedel noted this is happening at the silicon level, too, with NVIDIA.
Oh, yeah. NVIDIA isn't just selling chips now.
Right. They're selling full reference stacks, AI models ready to go. So instead of an auto company building AI from scratch, NVIDIA gives them the foundation, and the manufacturer just pours their own driving data into it.
Which speeds up the time to market dramatically.
Exactly.
But, getting the software to work is really only half the battle. Laura Hersig made this great point at the European AV Summit. She basically said, a pilot is not a small fleet.
Yeah, that is such a crucial distinction. Running 5 robotaxis is just a PR stunt.
Exactly. Running 500 robotaxis, though.
Yeah.
That is a massive, gritty real estate problem.
Oh, huge. You need physical depots.
You need charging stations, deep cleaning operations, and you have to solve the legal nightmare of data ownership. Because those sensors are collecting terabytes of data every single day.
And speaking of data, we have to talk about transparency, because Merck Venzura brought up a really sobering counterpoint with the Baidu Apollo Go fleet in Wuhan, China.
Oh, man, yeah. This is the incident where the robotaxis just froze, right?
Yeah, they literally bricked in the middle of live highway traffic. It caused rear-end crashes, passengers were trapped inside. But Venzura's main argument wasn't just about the software bug.
Because bugs will always happen.
Right. His issue was the dangerous lack of transparency afterward. When something like that happens, independent regulators can't access the raw data to audit what went wrong. It's a complete black box held by the manufacturer.
Wow.
And Venzura made the point that if an aviation authority couldn't look inside a black box after a plane crash, nobody would ever fly.
That is a great analogy. So it's not just a software issue. It's a fundamental trust issue, which actually makes me think, though, autonomy is basically becoming the airline industry, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Like Boeing builds the plane, Delta flies it, Expedia books the ticket. It's totally unbundled. But in Europe, the regulatory environment acts like this highly strict air traffic control. Do you think that strictness is actually a competitive advantage for Europe?
It absolutely is. And both Daniel Sarasagara and Lucas Neckerman argued exactly that point. Yeah, I mean, Europe's approach is notoriously slow and strict, but they argue that friction is a feature, not a bug.
Because it forces quality.
Exactly. The US and China allowed these rapid, kind of chaotic deployments. But Europe acts like a rigorous testing lab. Their streets are older, more complex, and the safety standards are just uncompromising.
So if you can pass the European test, you have a system that is inherently secure and one the public will actually trust.
Exactly. You've proven it in the hardest environment.
That makes perfect sense. But, this actually leads us right into a physical wall. And our final theme for today, system-level evolution and infrastructure bottlenecks.
Yes, the reality check of physical space.
Because you could have the most advanced robotaxi in the world or the most efficient e-bike, and none of it matters if the physical city cannot hold them. Which brings us back to that terrifying stat from Luke Rust.
The $130,000 parking space.
Yeah. Let's explain that. Why does a concrete rectangle in a basement cost as much as a luxury sports car now? It's not just inflation.
No, it's compounding engineering complexity. As cities get denser, developers have to dig deeper. They hit the water table, they need specialized labor, crazy expensive materials just to prevent the basement from flooding.
So just building parking is ruining the financial model for housing.
Totally. It's forcing developers to build car-free developments because the MAD demands it, which is actually altering how corporations think about mobility too.
Oh, right. The Nicholas Verstraete post?
Yeah, Verstraete analyzed Belgian corporate mobility budgets. And the numbers are wild. He found that 77% of the mobility budget isn't going to company cars anymore. It's going to housing allowances.
Wait, I really want to make sure I get this. Companies are paying their employees rent instead of giving them a car.
Yes, because the absolute most sustainable commute is the one that just doesn't happen.
Oh, wow. Proximity is the mobility solution.
Exactly. If you can help an employee afford a place that's a 15-minute walk from the office, you've solved the bottleneck. They don't need a parking spot. They don't sit in traffic. They don't produce emissions.
That is brilliant. It's such a smart reallocation of capital. But of course, people still do need to move around the city. And when they do, the physical clutter is getting intense. Remy Kay posted this observation from London transport hubs that was just wild.
Oh, the domino bikes.
Yeah. He showed these pictures of shared bikes stacked outside a train station, literally falling over like dominoes, just completely blocking the sidewalks for wheelchairs and pedestrians.
And, the immediate reaction is always to blame the riders, right? Like, oh, people are just lazy and careless.
Right. But Remy pointed out it's actually a mathematical failure of city planning.
How so?
Well, think about it. If hundreds of people get off a train and need a first-mile solution, the demand requires, say, 50 bikes. But the physical space outside that station was built in the 20th century to hold maybe 10 bikes.
Right.
So you force 50 bikes into a 10-bike space, and a slight gust of wind knocks the whole thing over. Yeah. It's a structural bottleneck, not just bad user behavior.
Hedda Heyerdahl echoed this perfectly. She called secure bicycle parking the missing link in policy.
The missing link, yeah.
Because we spend billions of dollars geeking out over battery chemistry and AI, but we completely ignore the geometry of where these vehicles sit when they aren't moving. If you buy a $3,000 premium e-bike, you're not going to commute on it if your only parking option is chaining it to a street lamp.
Exactly. The infrastructure has to be there to unlock the adoption of the hardware. And it also comes down to asset utilization, right? Like, how hard is the vehicle working when it is on the road?
Oh, for sure. Adib Samara shared a really great insight from Riyadh about this.
Yeah, looking at Blacklane, the premium chauffeur service, they run an all-electric fleet, which, sounds great for the environment. But Samara pointed out the real win isn't the electric motor.
It's the utilization rate.
Exactly. One single Blacklane chauffeur serves roughly 10 different executives throughout a single day. By providing that reliable premium service, they effectively take 4 to 5 privately owned executive cars completely off the road. Those private cars aren't driving in, and they aren't sitting idle in a $130,000 parking spot for 8 hours. They just don't exist in that environment.
And that right there is the crucial shift in perspective. Efficiency and space utilization is the new definition of eco-friendly. Because if you just take a massive gas SUV and swap it for a massive electric SUV...
You haven't solved the geometry problem.
Right. You've just changed the tailpipe. You haven't fixed the street.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this right now and you're mapping out your strategy, you really have to ask yourself, are you just swapping out the powertrain, or are you actually redesigning the system to solve physical constraints? The real winners in this next era won't just build the smartest cars. They'll figure out how to fit them into the concrete reality of our cities.
Definitely. And, I actually want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over today.
Yeah, okay, let's hear it.
Well, we spent this entire time talking about physical space, right? Infrastructure, distance. But Max Baitler recently hosted a discussion on a concept called chronoshift.
Chronoshift?
Yeah, and it completely flips the metric of how we evaluate mobility. He argues that we need to stop measuring mobility in kilometers and start measuring it in minutes.
So measuring time instead of distance.
Exactly, because time equity is quietly becoming the defining social challenge of our infrastructure. Think about those housing allowances we just talked about.
Right.
Wealth buys proximity. People with resources can afford to live near the transit hubs or right by their offices. But those with fewer resources are pushed further out to the edges of the city.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Right, so they are paying for their daily commute with their lifetime. A 2-hour daily commute is essentially a structural tax levied on a person's lifespan.
Man, that is a profound way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't just losing money on gas or train tickets. You are literally paying with hours of your life that you will never, ever get back.
Exactly. So as mobility professionals, the ultimate KPI shouldn't just be getting a piece of metal from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. The real goal is to give people their time back.
Yeah.
It's about what we do with the time in between and ultimately who gets the privilege of having that time.
That is a lot to think about. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, new episodes drop every 2 weeks. Also, check out our other editions on electrification and battery technology, next-gen vehicle intelligence, and commercial fleet insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today.
Keep questioning the systems around you, and don't forget to subscribe to stay ahead of the curve in the mobility industry. We'll catch you next time.